Please comment where you are watching in the world. The saxophone bleeds into the night air, low and sultry, wrapping around me like smoke. I adjust my black dress and scan the crowded jazz bar, searching for Marcus, or at least, the man who calls himself Marcus. The French Quarter pulses outside these brick walls, but inside Preservation Hall's smaller cousin, time moves like molasses. He's already here. Corner booth.my heart was racing. You must be Sarah. His voice carries that liquid Creole accent that made my knees weak during our phone calls. He stands, extends a hand. His palm is warm, slightly rough. Working hands. Marcus Thibodeau. Pleasure to finally meet you, Cher. The endearment rolls off his tongue like honey. I slide into the booth across from him, noting how he's positioned himself with a clear view of both the entrance and the back exit. Smart. Or paranoid. This place is incredible, I say, gesturing toward the small stage where a trumpet player closes his eyes, lost in his melody. How did you find it? Been coming here for years. He signals the waitress with 2 fingers. Before it got popular with the tourists. Back when it was just locals and the music. The waitress approaches, a woman with silver hair and knowing eyes. 2 Sazerac cocktails. Marcus orders without asking my preference. And tell Jerome I said to play Strange Fruit tonight. She nods like they're old friends. When she leaves, Marcus leans back, studying me with dark eyes that seem to catalog every detail. The way he looks at me makes my skin prickle. Not unpleasantly. Not yet. So tell me about yourself, Sarah. What brings a beautiful woman like you to the apps? I laugh, twirling a strand of hair around my finger. Same thing that brings everyone, I suppose. Looking for connection in a disconnected world. The line sounds rehearsed because it is. I've used it on 3 dates this month. Our drinks arrive. The Sazerac burns going down, all rye whiskey and absinthe. Marcus watches me taste it, his lips curving into a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. You handle your liquor well, he observes. Louisiana girl, born and raised in Baton Rouge. Ah, Red Stick. He nods approvingly. Good people up there. Salt of the earth. The band launches into a slow blues number. Marcus reaches across the table, his fingers brushing mine. His touch is electric, sending shivers up my arm. But there's something else, a callus on his ring finger where a wedding band might have been. Recently removed. Dance with me, he says. It's not really a question. We move to the small space in front of the stage. His hand finds the small of my back, pulls me close. He smells like expensive cologne and something else, something metallic I can't place. We sway to the music, his body pressed against mine. Other couples join us, but I barely notice them. Marcus commands attention without trying. You're a good dancer, I murmur against his ear. Had a good teacher. His breath is warm against my neck. My grandmother. She used to say dancing was like making love, all about rhythm and trust. The song ends. We return to our booth. Marcus excuses himself, heading toward the bar. I watch him go, admiring the way he moves, fluid, confident, like a predator who knows he's at the top of the food chain. That's when I notice it. The way his eyes sweep the room. Not casual observation, surveillance. He's watching the door, counting exits, noting faces. When the bartender hands him our fresh drinks, Marcus palms something into his hand. Money probably, but the exchange feels practiced. Professional. A chill runs down my spine despite the bar's warmth. He returns with our drinks and a story about growing up in the 9th Ward. His voice is hypnotic, painting pictures of childhood summers and family gatherings. But those eyes keep drifting toward the entrance. Every time the door opens, his shoulders tense slightly before relaxing. Excuse me, I say, standing. Ladies' room. The bathroom is cramped, wallpapered with vintage jazz posters. I check my reflection, lipstick smudged, pupils dilated from the dim lighting and alcohol. My phone buzzes with a news alert. Breaking. Convicted murderer escapes from Angola State Penitentiary during transport. Marcus Thibodeau, 34, serving life sentence for 3 counts of first-degree murder. Considered extremely dangerous. Do not approach. The phone slips from my trembling fingers, clattering against the tile floor. The grainy mugshot stares up at me, older, thinner, but unmistakably him. Same dark eyes. Same sharp cheekbones. Same smile that doesn't reach his eyes. My breath comes in short gasps. The bathroom walls seem to close in. 3 murders. Life sentence. Extremely dangerous. I splash cold water on my face, trying to think. The back exit, did I see one? Could I slip out without him noticing? But my purse is at the table. My keys. My wallet. Think, Sarah. Think. I force myself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Like yoga class. Like meditation. Like preparing for the performance of my life. When I return to the booth, Marcus is counting bills, a thick roll of 20s and 50s. He looks up as I approach, and for a split second, I see something flicker across his face. Recognition? Suspicion? Everything all right, Cher? You look pale. Just the drinks hitting me harder than expected. I slide back into the booth, hyper-aware of every movement. The way he watches my hands. The way he's positioned between me and the most direct route to the door. The band starts another set. Marcus reaches for his drink, and I notice his knuckles scarred like he's been in fights. Recent fights. This has been wonderful, he says, leaning forward. His voice drops to an intimate whisper. I was hoping we could continue this somewhere more private. My heart hammers against my ribs. Oh, my place isn't far. Walking distance. His fingers trace patterns on the table between us. Unless you have someone waiting at home tonight? Roommate? Boyfriend? The question hangs in the air like smoke. Casual. Conversational. Deadly. No, I hear myself say. No one waiting. His smile widens. In the dim light, his teeth look sharp. Perfect, Marcus says, signaling for the check. Just perfect. The saxophone wails its final note. The crowd applauds. And somewhere in the distance, I swear I hear sirens. I should have trusted my gut when he suggested that particular cafe in Williamsburg. Something about the way his eyes lingered on the storefront, like he'd been there before with someone else, should have been my first red flag. But Marcus seemed harmless enough, soft-spoken, well-read, the kind of guy who quoted Neruda without sounding pretentious. When he'd approached me at the gallery opening last week, complimenting my latest series on urban decay, I'd been flattered by his genuine interest in my work. The cafe was one of those aggressively trendy spots with exposed brick walls, Edison bulb fixtures, and baristas who looked like they'd stepped out of a fucking indie film. I arrived first, choosing a small table near the window where the afternoon light would be kind to both of us. Marcus walked in exactly on time, wearing the same navy cardigan from the gallery, his sandy hair slightly tousled in that effortless way that probably took 20 minutes to achieve. Sarah, you look beautiful, he said, leaning down to kiss my cheek. His cologne was subtle, expensive, something with notes of cedar and bergamot that made me want to lean closer. We ordered our drinks, a courte-du for him, an oat milk latte for me, and settled into easy conversation. He told me about his students, how he was trying to get them excited about contemporary poetry, specifically the work of Ocean Vuong. I found myself genuinely engaged, impressed by his passion for literature, and the way he could make even the most reluctant teenager care about metaphor and imagery. I actually just finished reading On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, I said, stirring the foam art in my cup. The way he writes about memory and trauma, it's fucking devastating in the best way. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. That's what I try to explain to my kids. Poetry isn't just pretty words arranged nicely. It's about excavating truth from the messiness of human experience. He paused, taking a sip of his courte-du. Speaking of travel and experience, I've been thinking about taking a sabbatical next year. Maybe spending some time in Southeast Asia, following Vuong's journey in reverse. I was about to respond when something shifted. It was subtle at first, the way his shoulders straightened, how his grip on the coffee cup tightened. His eyes, which had been warm and attentive, suddenly seemed to focus on something just over my shoulder. You know, Clara, he said, his voice dropping an octave, you always did have a thing for that pretentious literary bullshit. The words hit me like ice water. I'm sorry, what did you just call me? But Marcus, or whoever was sitting across from me now, wasn't the same person who'd walked through the door 15 minutes earlier. His posture had changed completely. Where before he'd sat with the slightly hunched shoulders of someone who spent his days encouraging shy teenagers to speak up, now he lounged back in his chair with an aggressive confidence that made my skin crawl. Don't play dumb with me, baby girl, he said, and the endearment sounded like a threat. You think I don't know what you're doing? Sitting there in your little black dress, pretending you're some kind of fucking artist. My heart started hammering against my ribs. This wasn't the man I'd agreed to have coffee with. This person had different mannerisms, different speech patterns, even a different accent, something rougher around the edges, more street than classroom. I think there's been some kind of mistake, I said carefully, my hand moving toward my purse. My name is Sarah, not Clara. We met at the gallery last week, remember? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Oh, you're good. Real fucking good. But I know you, Clara. I know how you operate. You think you can just disappear for 3 months, and then show up here like nothing happened. The barista behind the counter, a young guy with intricate sleeve tattoos and gauged ears, had stopped what he was doing and was watching our table with obvious concern. I caught his eye and tried to communicate my growing panic without alerting the stranger across from me. Look, I said, keeping my voice steady. I think you have me confused with someone else. I'm going to go now. I started to stand, but his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to make his point. You're not going anywhere, he said, his voice low and dangerous. We need to talk about what you did. About how you just fucking vanished without a word. Let go of me, I said louder now, hoping to draw attention from other customers. That's when something extraordinary and terrifying happened. His grip loosened, his face crumpled, and suddenly he was sobbing. Not just crying, full body, shoulder-shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken inside him. I'm sorry, he gasped, his voice back to the gentle tone I remembered from the gallery. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Did the other me hurt you? I stared at him, my wrist still tingling where he'd grabbed it. The other you? Sometimes he wiped his nose with the back of his hand, looking suddenly very young and very lost. Sometimes I become someone else. Someone angry. Someone who remembers things that never happened to me. The cafe had gone quiet around us. Other customers were staring, some with phones already in their hands. The barista had come out from behind the counter and was approaching our table. I don't know who Clara is, Marcus continued, his voice breaking. But when it happens, when I switch, I remember her so clearly. I remember loving her and losing her and being so fucking angry about it. But it's not my memory. It's not my life. I looked into his eyes and saw genuine confusion and terror. This was the man I'd met at the gallery, sensitive, articulate, kind. But I'd also seen the other one, the one who'd called me by another woman's name and grabbed my wrist like he owned me. The barista reached our table. Everything okay here? He asked, but his eyes were on Marcus, assessing the threat level. I should go, I said, standing up and grabbing my purse. Please, Marcus said, reaching toward me but stopping himself. I know how this looks. I know how fucking crazy this sounds. But I'm getting help. I have a therapist. I'm on medication. Is there someone I can call for you? The barista asked Marcus, his tone professional but firm. I was already backing toward the door when the barista caught my eye. Without Marcus seeing, he mouthed 2 words that made my blood run cold. Leave now. I didn't need to be told twice. I pushed through the door and onto the sidewalk, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my phone to call an Uber. Behind me, I could hear Marcus still talking to the barista, his voice high and desperate, explaining about the other him, about Clara, about memories that weren't his own. She was beautiful in that ethereal, wheatgrass-drinking way that made my carnivorous brain short-circuit. When she suggested we meet at Verdant Dreams on Hawthorne, Portland's most aggressively plant-based restaurant, I figured I could survive one night without bacon. The restaurant smelled like nutritional yeast and broken dreams. Sophie was already seated when I arrived, her pale hands wrapped around a mason jar of something green and foamy. She looked up at me with eyes the color of kale smoothies, and I felt my stomach clench. Though whether from attraction or the overwhelming scent of hemp protein, I couldn't tell. Simon. She stood to hug me, and I caught a whiff of patchouli mixed with something sharper, more medicinal. I'm so excited you're willing to expand your consciousness through compassionate eating. I forced a smile and slid into the reclaimed wood chair across from her. The menu was written in what appeared to be Sanskrit mixed with marketing speak. Transcendent tempeh transformation. Enlightened eggplant ecstasy. I felt like I needed a decoder ring. So, Sophie said, leaning forward with an intensity that made me shift uncomfortably. Tell me about your relationship with food. I blinked. My relationship? Yes. When did you first become complicit in the systematic torture and murder of innocent beings? The waitress, a girl with more piercings than a medieval torture device, appeared at our table. Can I start you folks with some activated charcoal water? Just regular water for me, I said. Sophie's eyes narrowed. Regular water? Do you know what they put in tap water? Fluoride. Chemicals. The tears of factory-farmed animals. I stared at her. I don't think they put animal tears in. Everything is connected, Simon. The water cycle, the food chain, the circle of suffering we perpetuate with every unconscious choice. She turned to the waitress. We'll have 2 glasses of your purest spring water, blessed by Tibetan monks. The waitress nodded like this was a completely normal request and disappeared. Now, Sophie continued, pulling out her phone and opening what appeared to be a notes app, I need to understand the depth of your participation in the Holocaust of innocence. Let's start with breakfast. What did you eat this morning? I felt sweat beading on my forehead. Cereal? What kind of cereal? Cheerios. Her face went white. Honey Nut Cheerios? No, just regular. With milk. I nodded, and she made a note on her phone, her fingers flying across the screen like she was documenting war crimes. Cow's milk, she whispered, and I swear I saw tears forming in her eyes. Do you know what they do to dairy cows, Simon? Do you know about the forced impregnation? The separation of mothers from their babies? It's just cereal. Just cereal? Her voice cracked like a whip, causing several other diners to look our way. Those cows are raped, Simon. Raped with artificial insemination devices. Their children are stolen from them. They cry for days. The blessed monk water arrived, and Sophie immediately downed half her glass like she was trying to wash away the taste of my moral corruption. Let's continue, she said, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Lunch yesterday. Sophie, maybe we should order. Lunch. Yesterday. I felt trapped, like I was in some kind of dietary deposition. A sandwich? What kind of sandwich? Turkey and Swiss. She actually gasped, her hand flying to her chest like I'd just confessed to murder. Which, in her mind, I suppose I had. Turkey, she breathed. A baby bird. Probably pumped full of hormones and antibiotics, living in its own filth until the day they slit its throat. It was from Subway. Subway? She was getting louder now, and I could feel the eyes of every hemp-wearing, kombucha-sipping patron in the place turning toward us. Do you know what Subway puts in their bread? Yoga mat chemicals, and their turkey is processed with nitrates that cause cancer. The waitress returned, looking nervous. Are you ready to order? Sophie didn't even look at her. He's not ready, she said, her gaze boring into me like a laser. He's still confessing his sins against the animal kingdom. I think I'll have the Beyond Burger, I said quickly, hoping to appease her. Beyond Burger? Sophie's laugh was sharp and bitter. You think you can just order one plant-based meal and wash away years of complicity? What about dinner 2 nights ago? I don't remember. Try. My mind raced. Pizza? What kind of pizza? Pepperoni? Sophie stood up so fast her chair fell backward, clattering against the reclaimed hardwood floor. The entire restaurant went silent. Pepperoni, she screamed, pointing at me like I was the Antichrist. Processed pig flesh. Do you know how intelligent pigs are, Simon? They're smarter than dogs. They have emotional lives. They form friendships. Tears were streaming down her face now, and she was shaking. Every slice of that pizza was a betrayal of trust, of innocence, of the sacred bond between all living beings. I tried to stand to calm her down, but she backed away from me like I was radioactive. And what about last week? She continued, her voice rising to a shriek. And the week before? How many chickens have died for your nuggets? How many cows for your burgers? How many fish have suffocated in nets while you ate your sushi? People were pulling out their phones now, recording. I could see the TikTok captions already. Vegan girl destroys carnivore on first date. Sophie, please. No. She climbed onto her chair, then onto the table, scattering our blessed monk water across the floor. Everyone needs to hear this. She turned to address the entire restaurant, her arms spread wide like some kind of deranged prophet. This man, she pointed down at me, has blood on his hands. We all do. Every time you bite into a burger, a cow dies. Every time you eat an egg, you're consuming a chicken's period. Every time you drink milk, you're participating in the systematic rape and torture of innocent mothers. The restaurant was dead silent except for the sound of phone cameras clicking and recording. You're all complicit, she screamed, spinning in a circle on the table. Complicit in mass murder. Genocide. Holocaust. A piece of kale from someone's salad was stuck to her shoe. Her mascara had run down her cheeks in black rivers. She looked like a beautiful, terrifying scarecrow. The animals are crying, she sobbed. Can't you hear them? They're crying for mercy, for justice, for someone to speak for them. The manager, a burly man with a man bun, approached our table. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to. Don't touch me. Sophie shrieked. I'm speaking for those who have no voice. She pulled out her phone and started live streaming, turning the camera on the horrified faces of the other diners. "Look at them," she cried into her phone. "Look at these murderers. Sitting here, eating their quinoa, and pretending they're enlightened while they go home to their leather couches and their wool sweaters." I stood up slowly, my face burning with embarrassment. Every person in the restaurant was staring at us, their phones out, recording what would undoubtedly become the most viral first date disaster in Portland history. "Sophie," I said quietly, "I think we should go." She turned the camera on me, her eyes wild and unfocused. "This is Simon," she announced to her live stream. "He ate pepperoni pizza 2 days ago. He's a murderer." That's when the waitress accidentally dropped a tray of dishes behind the counter. The crash of ceramic against tile was like a gunshot in the tense silence. Sophie screamed. Not a normal scream, but something primal and animalistic, like the sound a wounded animal might make. She leaped from the table onto her chair, then onto the floor, backing against the wall with her arms spread wide. "They're coming," she shrieked. "The ghosts of all the murdered animals. Can't you see them?" She was looking at something the rest of us couldn't see, her eyes tracking invisible shapes around the room. "The cows," she whispered, her voice suddenly small and broken. "They're here. They want justice." I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, but her voice followed me. "You can't run from them, Simon. They know what you've done. They'll follow you home." The last thing I heard as I pushed through the door was Sophie's voice, now speaking in what sounded like different accents, as if she was channeling the spirits of deceased livestock. "Moo," she said sadly. "Moo. Why did you eat us, Simon? We trusted humans. We loved humans. Moo." I ran to my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. Behind me, I could hear the commotion continuing inside the restaurant, Sophie's voice rising and falling like some kind of barnyard seance. I matched with him on a travel app, one of those hookup/friendship things people use when they're overseas. I had agreed to meet. More curious than anything. We settled on a rooftop bar in Victoria Island. If you've never been, imagine neon reflecting off the water, heat clinging to your skin like honey, and music so loud you feel it in your ribs. Lagos nightlife has this mix of danger and electricity. You can't tell if you're about to have the best night of your life or the last. He arrived late, of course, but damn, he looked like money. Black suit, gold watch, cologne that probably cost more than my rent back home. I thought, okay, maybe this isn't a scam after all. Maybe I've just lucked into one of those wild stories you tell your friends later. We ordered cocktails. He talked about business, family, travels. His voice was hypnotic, the kind of cadence that made everything sound like a promise. His hand brushed mine across the table, casual but lingering. I didn't mind. Truth be told, I was already imagining the night ending in his hotel room. Then the mood shifted. "You have a strange aura," he said suddenly, staring at me like he could see something under my skin. I laughed, thinking it was a line. Strange good or strange bad? He didn't smile. He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. He untied it with deliberate fingers, spilling bones across the table. Tiny curved things that clattered against the wood, animal bones maybe. People at nearby tables went quiet. A few turned their heads away like they didn't want to see. I thought it was a joke. Some voodoo gothic pickup trick. But his face stayed solemn. He whispered words I didn't understand, fingers brushing over the bones like he was reading them. Finally, he looked at me again. "You are marked. Something follows you. It must be cleansed." The air grew heavy, like the humidity had doubled. My skin prickled. I tried to laugh it off, but the way he was staring, flat, hungry, unwavering, made it impossible. "What do you mean?" He signaled the waiter with a flick of his wrist, murmured something in Yoruba. A glass appeared on the table, filled with a dark, bitter-smelling liquid. Not wine, not cola. Something thicker. "You must drink," he said, "or it will claim you." I pushed it away. I don't drink mystery potions on first dates. He leaned in close. His cologne was still intoxicating, but now it felt like a mask over something rotten. His voice dropped to a whisper that vibrated in my bones. "If you do not drink, you will not leave here." That's when I noticed the way other patrons avoided looking at us. Heads turned deliberately toward the bar, toward their phones, anywhere but our table. Nobody was going to help me. I tried to keep my voice light. "Look, this is getting a little weird. Maybe we should just..." He slammed his hand down, rattling the bones. I flinched. He smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that made me colder than any threat. "You think this is a game? Spirits are older than you, older than me. Drink, and they will let you go. And then his hand slid onto my thigh under the table. His palm was warm, steady, pressing just a little too high. His thumb stroked the inside of my leg as if he was checking my pulse. My body stiffened, torn between arousal and panic. He leaned even closer, lips almost brushing my ear. "Purification can be intimate," he murmured. I forced a laugh, though my voice cracked. "You don't waste time, do you?" His fingers pressed harder, possessive now. The cocktail glass sat between us, dark liquid catching the neon glow. My options were shrinking fast. Drink whatever the hell this was, or risk finding out what not leaving meant. I grabbed the glass, brought it to my lips, and pretended to sip. The smell was rancid, metallic. I let a little touch my tongue, bitter as ash, and faked a swallow before setting it down. He watched me intently, eyes narrowed, searching my face for a tell. Then he smiled again, satisfied. "Good. You are safe." His hand finally lifted from my thigh. Relief flooded me, but it was poisoned with nausea from whatever I'd just tasted. I needed to get out fast. I excused myself to the bathroom, legs shaky. Inside the tiled room, I spat into the sink until my mouth felt raw. My reflection looked pale, wide-eyed, like I'd just walked out of a nightmare. When I opened the door, he was standing there waiting. He tilted his head, watching me like prey, and said, "The spirits say you belong to me now." That was it. My body took over. I bolted past him, heart hammering, shoving through the crowded bar until I hit the street. I ran until the neon blurred and the noise swallowed me. I didn't stop running until I found a taxi. I threw myself inside, babbling the name of my hotel. The driver glanced at me in the rear view, eyes sharp, but he didn't ask questions. He drove fast like he knew. Back in my room, I locked the door, double-bolted it, shoved a chair under the handle. My phone buzzed with messages from him. "You are not cleansed yet. Come back. The spirits are waiting." I blocked the number. Then another message came from a new one. Then another. Different numbers, same words. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I checked out and caught the first flight out of Lagos. The bones, the drink, his hand on my thigh, it all still clung to me like smoke. Some dates end with awkward silence. Some end with a kiss. Mine ended with the whisper of bones rattling on a table, and the sound of a man telling me I didn't belong to myself anymore. I'll admit it, Manny was hot in that sun-baked, ex-military, probably knows how to kill a guy with his bare hands kind of way. Broad shoulders, shaved head, hands rough enough to make you wonder what else they could do. He was the kind of man that makes you swipe right even when your gut says this one's trouble. We were supposed to grab tacos in Phoenix, something casual, but he texted last minute. "I've got a better idea. You up for a little adventure?" Against every smart bone in my body, I said yes. He picked me up in a beat-up pickup, desert dust caked thick on the hood. Inside, the smell of gasoline, sweat, and Monster Energy drinks. A cross dangled from the rear view, swaying with each bump. "You ever been off-roading?" he asked, flashing that cocky grin. "No," I said, buckling my seatbelt tighter. "You'll love it." We drove west, the city melting away until it was just desert, cactus, scrub, and sky. The sunset painted everything in oranges and purples. It was beautiful in that lonely way that makes you realize how small you are. He rested one hand on the wheel, the other casually on my thigh. His thumb traced slow circles, inching higher. I didn't stop him, not at first. Part of me liked the boldness. Part of me liked imagining what might happen later under those desert stars. But then he said it. "Phones don't work out here. And that's good. Phones are tracking devices." He snatched mine from my lap and tossed it into the glove compartment like it was contraband. "Hey!" I reached for it, but he just laughed. "Relax, Jasmine. Out here, no one's watching. It's just us." That's the thing about isolation. At first it feels romantic. Then it feels like a cage. He turned down a dirt track that rattled my bones. When he finally stopped, we were perched on a ridge overlooking miles of empty land. The stars were bleeding through the sky, sharp and endless. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he asked, cracking a beer. I nodded, though the pit in my stomach was growing. He handed me one. "To freedom." I sipped. Warm, flat. He grinned like we were sharing a secret. "See people in the city? They're slaves. To jobs, to bills, to bullshit. But out here we're free." He slid closer, his hand gripping my thigh again, firmer this time. His lips brushed my ear, his voice a low growl. "No rules. No one to stop us. Just you and me." I laughed nervously. "Okay, survival man. What's the plan? Roast marshmallows? Howl at the moon. His grin widened. He pulled a knife from his boot, twirling it lazily. The plan is we don't go back. I froze. What do you mean? He pressed the flat of the blade against his leg, eyes locked on me. Civilization is poison. I've been waiting for someone like you to see it. To stay. You'll learn to live the real way with me. The words landed heavy, like stones in my chest. His hand on my thigh felt less like a flirt and more like a claim. I forced a shaky smile. That's intense. You like intense, he said, leaning closer. His breath was hot, sour with beer. His hand slid higher, possessive now. He kissed me hard, teeth clashing. I kissed him back, because what else could I do? My mind screamed, play along, Jasmine, play along until you can run. When he pulled back, his eyes burned with something feral. See? You belong here. I tried to steady my voice. Let me grab my phone, just to text my roommate. Tell her I won't be back tonight. His grin vanished. He stepped in front of me, knife still twirling. No phones. No one needs to know. Out here, it's just us. The desert was silent around us, endless and merciless. My pulse hammered. So I did the only thing I could think of. I leaned into him, pressing my body against his, my lips brushing his neck. He loosened, distracted. His knife hand dropped just enough. I kissed him again, slow this time, his grip on me tightening like he thought he'd won. And then, when his eyes fluttered shut, I shoved him with everything I had. He stumbled, swearing, knife clattering onto the rocks. I bolted for the truck, heart pounding, vision tunneling. My fingers fumbled with the lock, but I yanked the door open and dove in just as he lunged. His palm smacked the glass, leaving a print smeared with dust and sweat. Don't run, he screamed, face twisted with rage. You'll regret it. I turned the key. The engine roared. Gravel sprayed as I sped down the dirt track, his figure shrinking in the rearview until the desert swallowed him. Signal came back miles later. My phone buzzed with missed calls and texts. I dialed 911, my voice shaking so hard I could barely get the words out. The dispatcher told me to pull over and wait. I didn't. Not until I saw the city lights again, glowing like salvation on the horizon. The humidity clung to my skin like a second layer as I stepped out of the air-conditioned lobby of the Nile Hilton, my sandals clicking against the marble floor that had become as familiar as my dorm room back in Boston. 3 months into my semester abroad, and I still felt like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. The Arabic phrases I'd memorized felt clumsy on my tongue, and despite my best efforts to blend in, everything about me screamed American tourist, from my carefully chosen modest outfit to the way I clutched my purse a little too tightly. That's when I met Liam. He wasn't what I expected from a local. Tall, with perfectly styled dark hair, and clothes that looked like they came from a European boutique rather than the Khan El-Khalili bazaar. His English was flawless, tinged with just enough of an accent to be charming rather than difficult to understand. We'd struck up a conversation at a coffee shop near the American University, where I was nursing my third cappuccino of the day and pretending to read Naguib Mahfouz while actually people watching through the window. You look like someone who's tired of seeing Cairo through guidebook pages, he'd said, sliding uninvited into the chair across from me. Under normal circumstances, I would have been annoyed by the presumption. But there was something magnetic about his confidence, the way he seemed to see right through my carefully constructed facade of worldly sophistication. He was right, of course. After 3 months of dutifully visiting the pyramids, the Egyptian Museum, and every mosque recommended by Lonely Planet, I felt like I was experiencing Cairo through a thick pane of glass. The real city, the one where actual people lived and worked and fell in love and broke each other's hearts, remained frustratingly out of reach. I could show you the real Cairo, Liam continued, stirring sugar into his tea with deliberate slowness. Not the tourist version. The city that lives and breathes after the tour buses go home. The offer hung in the air between us like incense smoke. I should have been more cautious. My mother's voice echoed in my head, all the warnings she'd given me before I left Boston. Asterisk, don't trust strangers. Don't go anywhere alone with men you don't know. Don't be naive, Rebecca, asterisk. But sitting in that coffee shop, watching the late afternoon sun paint everything golden, caution felt like cowardice. I was 21 years old, studying international relations, planning to work for the State Department someday. How could I claim to understand the world if I was too afraid to step outside my comfort zone? What did you have in mind? I asked. His smile was slow and knowing. Meet me tomorrow night at 9. The Nile Corniche, near the Khazar Al-Nil Bridge. Wear something comfortable for walking. I spent the next day in a state of nervous excitement, changing my outfit 3 times and Googling safety tips for dating in Egypt, until my laptop battery died. My roommate Sarah, a sensible pre-med student from Ohio, raised her eyebrows when I told her about my plans. "You're meeting a complete stranger for a date in a foreign country," she said, not looking up from her anatomy textbook. "Do you hear how that sounds?" "It's not a date," I protested, though even as I said it, I wasn't entirely sure that was true. "It's cultural exchange. Educational." Sarah snorted. "Just text me every hour, okay? And if I don't hear from you by midnight, I'm calling the embassy." The Nile Corniche at night was a different world from the daytime chaos of Cairo traffic. Couples strolled hand in hand along the promenade, families shared picnics on the grass, and the lights of the city reflected off the dark water like scattered stars. I found Liam exactly where he'd said he'd be, leaning against the bridge railing in dark jeans and a white button-down shirt that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. "You came," he said, and I couldn't tell if he was surprised or pleased. I said I would. Americans don't always keep their promises. There was something in his tone that made me look at him more carefully, but his expression was unreadable in the lamplight. He pushed himself off the railing and gestured toward the street. "Come." The real Cairo doesn't reveal itself to people who stand still. Instead of walking along the river as I'd expected, Liam led me to a battered yellow taxi idling at the curb. The driver, a heavy-set man with graying hair and tired eyes, nodded at Liam like they knew each other. They exchanged a few rapid words in Arabic that I couldn't follow. "Where are we going?" I asked as Liam opened the back door for me. "Somewhere tourists never see," he said. "Trust me." The word trust should have been a red flag. In retrospect, there were so many red flags I'd ignored. The way the taxi driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, the fact that Liam hadn't told me his last name or where he worked, the route we were taking that led us away from the well-lit tourist areas and into increasingly narrow, poorly maintained streets. But in the moment, pressed against the cracked vinyl seat with Liam's cologne mixing with the smell of cigarettes and diesel fuel, I felt alive in a way I hadn't since arriving in Egypt. This was what I'd come here for: authentic experience, real connection, stories I could tell for the rest of my life. The taxi wound through a maze of alleyways I'd never seen before, past buildings that looked like they hadn't been maintained since the revolution. Laundry hung from balconies like prayer flags, and the sound of televisions and arguments and crying babies drifted down from open windows. This was indeed a Cairo I'd never experienced, but as the minutes ticked by, my excitement began to curdle into something else. "How much further?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Almost there," Liam said, but he was looking out the window instead of at me, and his earlier warmth had been replaced by something more businesslike. The taxi finally stopped in front of a building that looked like it might collapse if someone sneezed too hard. The facade was crumbling, with chunks of concrete missing and rebar showing through like broken bones. Most of the windows were boarded up, and the few that weren't were dark. "This is it," Liam announced, but he made no move to get out of the car. "This is what?" I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. "I want you to meet my family," he said, and now his smile looked different in the dim light from the taxi's dashboard. "They're waiting upstairs. We've made arrangements." The word arrangements hit me like a physical blow. Everything about the situation, the isolated location, the crumbling building, the way Liam's demeanor had shifted, suddenly snapped into focus with terrifying clarity. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, reaching for the door handle. "I should get back to my hotel." That's when I heard it, the soft but unmistakable sound of the taxi's door locks engaging. The driver was watching me in the rearview mirror, and his tired eyes weren't tired anymore. They were alert, calculating, waiting. "Rebecca," Liam said, and hearing my name in his mouth made my skin crawl. "Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." I realized with growing horror that I had never told him my name. The cobblestones around Faneuil Hall gleamed, wet under the amber streetlights, reflecting the October drizzle that had been falling since dusk. I adjusted my collar against the chill as I approached the restaurant, a cozy Italian place tucked between a souvenir shop and a seafood joint that catered to tourists. I'd chosen it specifically for its warm lighting and comfortable atmosphere, perfect for a first date with someone I'd met through a mutual friend at work. She was already seated when I arrived, a striking figure in an elegant black dress that seemed almost formal for the casual venue. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat chignon, and her pale hands were folded carefully on the white tablecloth. What caught my attention immediately, however, was the way her fingers worried at something around her neck, a delicate gold locket that caught the candlelight as it swayed. "Lisa?" I asked, approaching the table with what I hoped was a confident smile. She looked up, and for a moment, her expression was unreadable. Her eyes, a deep, almost violet blue, seemed to search my face with an intensity that made me slightly uncomfortable. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, she smiled warmly and extended her hand. "David, thank you for meeting me. I hope you don't mind that I got here early. I wanted to make sure we had a good table." I settled into the chair across from her, noting how her fingers never stopped moving over the locket. It was an unconscious gesture, I realized, like a nervous tick. The pendant itself was beautiful, antique gold with intricate engravings that I couldn't quite make out in the dim light. The chain was delicate, almost ethereal, and seemed to catch every flicker of the candle flame between us. "That's a lovely piece," I said, nodding toward her necklace as I unfolded my napkin. Her hand stilled instantly, and her smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire, and I could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. "Thank you. It's very special to me." The waiter appeared, breaking the momentary tension, and we ordered wine, a bottle of Chianti that I hoped would help ease the slight unease I sensed beneath Lisa's composed exterior. The sommelier, an elderly Italian man with kind eyes, poured a small taste for me to approve. The wine was rich and full-bodied, with notes of cherry and earth that seemed to warm the space between us. As we waited for our appetizers, Lisa began talking about her work at Massachusetts General Hospital, where she worked as a cardiac nurse. Her voice was melodic, professional, and she spoke with the kind of clinical precision that came from years of medical training. But there was something else there too, a careful distance, as if she were reciting lines from a script she'd memorized long ago. "The night shift can be challenging," she explained, her fingers resuming their gentle manipulation of the locket. "You see people at their most vulnerable moments. Families saying goodbye, patients fighting for every breath. It changes you being witness to so much transition." I nodded, genuinely interested. I'd always admired healthcare workers, having lost my own father to a heart attack several years earlier. That must be incredibly difficult. How do you cope with the emotional weight of it all? Something shifted in her expression then, a shadow passing across her features like clouds over the moon. Her grip on the locket tightened, and for a moment, her knuckles went white against the gold chain. "You learn to listen," she said quietly, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Really listen. People have so much to say, even when they can't speak anymore. Especially then." The wine arrived, and I poured for both of us, grateful for the momentary distraction. The restaurant around us buzzed with the comfortable sounds of evening dining, the clink of silverware against china, the soft murmur of conversations, the occasional burst of laughter from a nearby table. But as Lisa lifted her glass, I noticed her hand trembling slightly. The Chianti sloshed gently against the sides of the glass, creating tiny crimson waves that caught the light. "Are you all right?" I asked, leaning forward slightly. She took a sip and set the glass down carefully, as if it were made of the most fragile crystal. Her movements were precise, controlled, but I could see the effort it took. "I'm sorry. I don't get out much anymore. Not since." She trailed off, her thumb tracing the edge of the locket with increasing urgency. "My husband passed away 8 months ago. Heart attack. Sudden, unexpected. One moment he was laughing at something on television, and the next, the words hung in the air between us like a physical presence. I felt my chest tighten with sympathy, remembering my own experience with sudden loss. The way the world could shift in an instant, leaving you standing in the wreckage of what used to be normal. "Lisa, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. If you're not ready to be dating, I completely understand." "No," she interrupted, her voice sharp enough to cut through my words. The intensity in her eyes flared, and for a moment, I saw something raw and desperate beneath her composed exterior. "No, I need this. I need to. He would want me to move forward. He tells me so." The restaurant's ambient noise, clinking silverware, muted conversations, the soft jazz playing overhead, seemed to fade into the background. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. The candle between us flickered, casting dancing shadows across Lisa's face, making her expression difficult to read. "He tells you." Lisa's eyes took on a distant quality, as if she were looking through me rather than at me. Her fingers worked the locket with increasing fervor, and I could see the chain leaving small red marks on her neck, where she'd been pulling at it. At night, mostly. When the house is quiet and the world feels thin. He whispers to me from the other side of the pillow, tells me about his day, asks about mine. Sometimes I wake up, and I can still feel the warmth where his body should be. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the October weather. I glanced around the restaurant, suddenly hyper-aware of the normalcy surrounding us. Couples sharing pasta, families celebrating birthdays, the mundane comfort of ordinary life. A young couple at the next table was laughing over shared tiramisu, completely oblivious to the conversation unfolding mere feet away. Yet here, at our small table, reality seemed to be bending at the edges. "Lisa," I said gently, choosing my words carefully, "grief can play tricks on our minds. It's completely normal to feel like. You look exactly like him." The words hit me like a physical blow. Lisa was leaning forward now, her violet eyes fixed on my face with laser intensity. The locket had slipped from her fingers and hung suspended between us, swaying hypnotically in the candlelight. The gold caught the flame and threw tiny reflections across the white tablecloth, creating patterns that seemed to dance and shift. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your eyes," she whispered, her voice taking on an almost reverent quality. "The same warm brown, with those little gold flecks around the iris. And your hands," she gestured toward where my fingers gripped my wine glass. "The way you hold things, so careful, so gentle." Michael had surgeon's hands too, even though he was an accountant. I felt the walls of the restaurant closing in around me. The coincidence was unsettling, but what disturbed me more was the way Lisa was looking at me. Not like a woman on a first date, but like someone who had found something precious that had been lost. Her breathing had become shallow, rapid, and I could see the pulse point at her throat beating frantically. That's quite a coincidence," I managed, my own voice sounding strange to my ears. Lisa reached across the table then, her fingers cool against my cheek. Her touch was feather-light, almost reverent, as if she were handling something sacred and fragile. The contact sent an electric shock through me, not of attraction, but of something far more primal, fear. "You came back to me," she whispered, her thumb tracing the line of my jaw with trembling fingers. "You promised you would." The locket caught the candlelight as it swayed between us, and I could finally see the engraving clearly. Two intertwined hearts with the inscription, "Forever and Always, M\L." But it was what I glimpsed when the pendant twisted that made my blood run cold. A tiny photograph visible through a crack in the gold casing. A man's face, smiling, with warm brown eyes flecked with gold. A face that could have been my twin. The resemblance was uncanny, almost supernatural in its precision. The same strong jawline, the same slightly crooked smile, even the same small scar above the left eyebrow that I had gotten falling off my bike as a child. It was as if I were looking at a photograph of myself, taken in some parallel universe where I had lived a different life, loved a different woman, died a different death. In that moment, I understood that I wasn't on a date with a grieving widow learning to love again. I was sitting across from a woman whose grief had curdled into something far more dangerous. A delusion so complete that she had reconstructed reality to accommodate her desperate need for her husband's return. And somehow, impossibly, I had become the vessel for that resurrection. The restaurant continued its gentle hum around us, oblivious to the horror unfolding at table 12, where love and loss had twisted into something unrecognizable, and where a simple gold locket held the power to transform a stranger into a ghost made flesh. The other diners continued their meals, their conversations, their normal lives, while I sat frozen in the amber light of a candle, trapped between the living and the dead, between reality and the desperate dreams of a woman who refused to let go. Lisa's hand was still on my cheek, her touch growing warmer, more insistent. "I knew you'd find your way back to me, Michael," she whispered. "I knew love was stronger than death." And in the flickering candlelight, with the weight of her grief pressing down on me like a physical force, I began to wonder if perhaps she was right. I hurried toward Café Culturalna, my heels clicking against the ancient stones. October's chill bit through my wool coat, but I felt a flutter of nervous excitement. Another blind date. My friend Kasia had insisted he was passionate about Poland's future and incredibly intelligent. After 3 months of disappointing Tinder encounters, I was willing to give her matchmaking another chance. The bar's wooden door creaked as I pushed inside, immediately enveloped by warmth and the rich aroma of mulled wine and roasted meat. Laughter bubbled from corner tables where groups of friends huddled over steaming mugs, their faces flushed from alcohol and animated conversation. The walls, lined with vintage photographs of pre-war Warsaw, seemed to pulse with life and history. This was exactly the kind of place I loved, authentic, unpretentious, filled with the soul of the city I'd called home for 2 years since moving here for work. I spotted him immediately at a corner table, just as Kasia had described, tall, sharp-featured, with intense dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Tomasz rose as I approached, his smile broad and welcoming, his handshake firm and lingering just a moment too long. "Anna, yes? You're even more beautiful than Kasia described." His English carried only the faintest accent, polished and precise. He pulled out my chair with old-world courtesy that made me smile despite myself. The first hour passed pleasantly enough. Tomasz was indeed intelligent. He spoke knowledgeably about literature, art, the restoration projects breathing new life into Warsaw's historic districts. He ordered for both of us in rapid Polish, explaining each dish with the enthusiasm of someone genuinely proud of his culture. I found myself relaxing, laughing at his stories about growing up in the shadow of the Palace of Culture, that Stalin-era monstrosity that dominated the city skyline. But as the evening wore on and the alcohol flowed, something shifted. His voice grew louder, more insistent. His eyes took on a fervent gleam that made my stomach tighten with unease. "You see, Anna, this is what foreigners don't understand about Poland," he said, leaning forward across the small table. "We are not just another European country. We are the heart of Europe, the defenders of Christian civilization. For centuries, we stood as the bulwark against invasion, against corruption of our pure Polish blood." The word pure hit me like a slap. I glanced around nervously, noticing how other patrons had begun to turn in their seats, conversations quieting as Tomasz's voice carried across the intimate space. "Tomasz, maybe we should." "No, you need to hear this." His hand shot across the table, fingers wrapping around my wrist with surprising strength. "This is important. This is why I wanted to meet you. Kasia told me you work for that NGO, helping refugees. You have a good heart, but you've been deceived." My blood turned to ice water. The warmth of the bar seemed to drain away, leaving only the harsh fluorescent gleam of his eyes and the crushing pressure of his grip on my wrist. Around us, I could feel the atmosphere changing, conversations dying, chairs scraping as people shifted uncomfortably or quietly gathered their coats. The immigrants flooding into Europe, into our Poland, they're not refugees, Anna. They're invaders. They come here to destroy our way of life, to pollute our bloodlines, to replace our children with their own. His voice rose with each word, spittle forming at the corners of his mouth. The politicians, the media, the so-called humanitarian organizations, they're all part of the conspiracy to commit genocide against the Polish people. I tried to pull my hand away, but his grip tightened. My heart hammered against my ribs as I realized how isolated our corner table was, how the other patrons were now actively avoiding looking in our direction. The bartender, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, caught my gaze and took a step toward us, but Tomasz's voice boomed across the space. "We need cleansing, a purification of Poland's blood. The weak politicians won't do what's necessary, but there are those of us who will. We will save our homeland from this invasion, from this corruption that seeps into our schools, our neighborhoods, our very souls." The bar had gone completely silent now. I could hear my own ragged breathing, could smell the sour tang of fierce sweat mixing with the previously comforting aromas of food and drink. A young couple near the door quietly stood and left, the woman's face pale with shock. An elderly man at the bar shook his head and muttered something under his breath. "Tomasz, please, you're scaring people. You're scaring me." My voice came out smaller than I intended, barely above a whisper. His grip loosened slightly, but his eyes never left mine. When he spoke again, his voice dropped to an intimate whisper that was somehow more terrifying than his shouting had been. "You'll understand my mission, Anna. That's why Kasia brought us together. She knows you have the intelligence to see the truth once it's explained properly. You work with these people, these invaders, but you can be saved. You can join us in the great work of preserving our race, our culture, our very existence." The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a date. This had never been a date. I wasn't sitting across from a potential romantic partner. I was trapped at a table with a zealot who saw me not as a woman, not as a human being, but as a potential convert to his twisted ideology. The careful way he'd drawn me in, the initial charm, the gradual revelation of his beliefs, it had all been calculated, planned. My hands began to shake as I understood that Kasia, my friend Kasia whom I'd trusted, had known exactly what kind of man she was setting me up with. Had she been recruited too? Was this how it worked? Drawing in well-meaning people through personal connections, through the illusion of romance and intimacy. I need to leave, I managed to say, my voice stronger now, fueled by a surge of anger that cut through my fear. No. His grip tightened again, and I saw something dangerous flicker in his eyes. Not until you understand. Not until you see what's at stake. The future of Poland, Anna. The future of our children. The bartender was moving toward us now, his face grim with determination. Other patrons were reaching for their phones, and I realized with a mixture of relief and terror that this scene was about to escalate far beyond a failed date. As I sat there, trapped by his iron grip and burning gaze, I understood that I had stumbled into something far darker than I'd ever imagined possible in this city I'd grown to love. The warm, welcoming Warsaw I thought I knew had revealed its shadow side, and I was staring directly into the face of a hatred so pure and consuming that it transformed everything it touched. The old town's ancient stones had witnessed centuries of history, of invasion and resistance, of triumph and tragedy. Tonight, they would witness one more small but significant moment in the ongoing struggle between tolerance and hatred, between the Poland that welcomed strangers and the Poland that wanted to purge them from existence. And I was no longer just an observer of that struggle. I had become its unwilling participant. But there I was, Michelle Torres from suburban Phoenix, sitting across from Liam Ashworth in the most expensive restaurant I'd ever set foot in. The Burj Al Arab stretched above us like a gleaming sail, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Dubai's skyline glittered like scattered diamonds against the Persian Gulf. Liam had flown me here first class, put me up in a suite that cost more per night than I made in a month, and now he was ordering champagne that probably cost more than my car. You see that building? He pointed with a manicured finger toward the Burj Khalifa, its LED lights dancing in synchronized patterns. I own 3 floors. Bought them with Bitcoin when it hit $65K. His British accent made everything sound more sophisticated, more believable. Made my first million when I was 23. Now I'm 31 and worth more than some small country's GDP. I laughed nervously, twirling my pasta around my fork. We'd met on a dating app 3 weeks ago, and his profile had seemed too good to be true. Private jets, exotic locations, designer everything. But here I was, living proof that sometimes fairy tales do come true. Or so I thought. After dinner, he led me to the marina where his yacht waited. It wasn't just a boat, it was a floating palace, all white leather and chrome, with a crew of 4 who called him Mr. Ashworth and treated him like royalty. The champagne fountain on the upper deck caught the moonlight, sending prismatic reflections across the water as Dubai's neon skyline painted the night in electric blues and golds. This is insane, I breathed, accepting another glass of Dom Perignon from a uniformed server. This is just Tuesday for me, love. Liam pulled me close, his cologne mixing with the salt air. Wait until you see what I have planned for tomorrow. Private helicopter tour of the Palm Jumeirah, then shopping on the Champs-Élysées. I'm flying us to Paris for lunch. He reached into his leather satchel, Louis Vuitton naturally, and pulled out thick stacks of cash. Hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars in various currencies. Crypto's been good to me, he said, fanning the bills like playing cards. When you understand blockchain technology like I do, when you can read the market patterns, predict the whale movements, it's like printing money. I stared at the cash, my small-town sensibilities warring with the intoxicating glamour of it all. Liam, this is incredible. But isn't it dangerous carrying around so much cash? He laughed, that confident sound that had first attracted me to him. Danger? In Dubai. This is the safest place on earth for people like us. The government protects investors, especially crypto investors. We're the future of their economy. The yacht rocked gently as we cruised past the iconic Atlantis resort, its pink towers illuminated against the night sky. Other luxury vessels dotted the water around us, a floating parade of wealth and excess. I felt like I was living in a movie, like any moment I'd wake up back in my cramped Phoenix apartment with its broken air conditioning and overdue bills. That's when I saw the lights. At first, they were just distant specks on the horizon, but they were moving fast, cutting through the water with purpose. Liam noticed them too, and his expression changed instantly. The confident smile vanished, replaced by something I'd never seen before, raw, animal panic. Shit. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. Michelle, listen to me very carefully. Whatever happens next, you don't know me. We just met tonight. You're a tourist, nothing more. What are you talking about? Liam, you're scaring me. The lights were closer now, and I could make out the sleek lines of Coast Guard vessels, their searchlights sweeping across the water like hungry predators. The sound of their engines grew louder, drowning out the gentle lapping of waves against our hull. Liam's hands were shaking as he shoved the leather satchel into my lap. It was heavier than I expected, and I could feel the weight of all that cash, all those secrets. "Don't say my name," he whispered urgently, his British accent cracking with desperation. "They'll deport you too. They'll destroy your life just like they're about to destroy mine." "Liam, what did you do?" But before he could answer, the Coast Guard boats surrounded us, their spotlights turning night into harsh, unforgiving day. Armed guards in tactical gear boarded our yacht with military precision, their weapons glinting under the artificial suns of their searchlights. And that's when I realized the horrible truth. I wasn't just on a date with Dubai's crypto king. I was now his accomplice in whatever crime had brought these men with guns to our floating paradise. The satchel in my lap felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, and I understood with crystal clarity that my fairy tale had just become a nightmare. I felt hesitant. Dr. Marchand suggested dinner at Zuma in Brickell. Not because it's a bad restaurant. Hell, it's one of the best in Miami. But because it was our first date, and he was dropping serious money on someone he'd only met 3 days ago at Jackson Memorial Hospital. I was there visiting my abuela after her hip surgery, and he was making his rounds, all charm and expensive cologne cutting through that antiseptic hospital smell that clings to everything in that place. The thing about growing up in Miami is you develop a sixth sense about people. You have to. This city attracts all kinds, the beautiful, the desperate, the dangerous. My mommy always told me, Mija in Miami, everyone's running from something or towards something, and sometimes those somethings ain't good. I should have listened to her voice echoing in my head when Dr. Marchand, Jean-Claude, he insisted I call him, picked me up in his black Maserati outside my apartment in Coral Gables. But Jesus, he was handsome. Tall, dark skin that spoke of Caribbean sun, and hands that looked like they could perform miracles. Which, according to him, they did. He told me he was a surgeon, specialized in organ transplants, spent half his time at Jackson, and the other half doing humanitarian work in Haiti. Noble, right? The kind of man my abuela would approve of, the kind who saves lives instead of just taking up space. The drive down Brickell Avenue should have been romantic. The Miami skyline glittering like scattered diamonds, the bay stretching out dark and infinite beyond the high-rises. Instead, I found myself studying his profile in the dashboard light, noticing how his eyes never quite met mine in the rearview mirror, how his smile seemed practiced, like he'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror until it looked natural. Zuma sits on the 15th floor of the epic residences, all floor-to-ceiling windows and sleek modern lines. The kind of place where Miami's elite go to see and be seen, where Russian oligarchs rub shoulders with Colombian businessmen, and nobody asks too many questions about where the money comes from. Jean-Claude had reserved a corner table with a perfect view of Biscayne Bay, the water black as oil under the night sky. "You look beautiful tonight, Sophia," he said, pulling out my chair. His accent was subtle, French Creole mixed with something else I couldn't place. "That dress, it brings out your eyes." I'd chosen the red dress carefully, the one that hugged my curves just right, the one that made me feel powerful. Now, under his gaze, I felt exposed, like he was seeing through the fabric to something underneath. Something he wanted. The conversation started normal enough. He asked about my work. I'm a nurse at Baptist Hospital in Kendall, and I asked about his. He told me stories about Haiti, about the clinic he'd helped establish in Port-au-Prince, about children he'd saved and lives he'd changed. His eyes lit up when he talked about his work, and for a moment, I thought maybe I'd been wrong about him. Maybe the weird feeling in my stomach was just first-date nerves. The wine came, a bottle of something French and expensive that probably cost more than I make in a week. Jean-Claude poured with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this many times before, his movements precise, surgical. That's when I noticed his hands again. Clean, manicured, but there were small scars across his knuckles, thin white lines that looked deliberate. "Tell me about yourself, Sophia," he said, settling back in his chair. "Your family, your health. You seem very vital." Vital. Strange word choice, but I played along. I told him about growing up in Hialeah, about my parents who'd come from Cuba with nothing but hope and determination, about my abuela who raised me while my parents worked 3 jobs between them, about how I'd put myself through nursing school at FIU, how I'd chosen to stay in Miami because this city, for all its craziness, was home. He listened intently, too intently, like he was memorizing every word. When I mentioned that I ran marathons, that I'd never smoked, that I was religious about my annual physicals, something shifted in his expression. A hunger, maybe, or satisfaction. "You're very health conscious," he observed, refilling my wine glass. "That's admirable. So many people in this city abuse their bodies. Drugs, alcohol, poor diet. They don't realize what a gift good health is." The appetizers arrived, some kind of elaborate sashimi that probably swam in Japanese waters that morning. Jean-Claude barely touched his, but he watched me eat with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Every bite seemed to please him, like he was cataloging my appetite, my metabolism. "Do you know your blood type?" he asked suddenly, the question dropping into our conversation like a stone into still water. I paused, chopsticks halfway to my mouth. "What? Your blood type? It's important information. In my line of work, we see how crucial it can be. The difference between life and death, sometimes." "Oh, negative," I said, though something told me I shouldn't have. "Universal donor, right?" His smile widened, and I swear I saw something predatory flash behind his eyes. "The gold standard. Very valuable." The main course came, Wagyu beef that melted like butter, prepared by chefs who probably trained in Tokyo. But I'd lost my appetite. Jean-Claude cut his steak with surgical precision, each slice exactly the same thickness, and I found myself staring at the knife in his hand, at how comfortable he looked with a blade. "You're healthy, yes?" he continued, as casual as if he were asking about the weather. "Strong kidneys? Good liver function? You mentioned you don't drink much, don't smoke. That's excellent for organ health." My blood went cold. In the reflection of the window, I could see Biscayne Bay stretching out below us, dark and deep enough to hide anything. Or anyone. "Do you know," he said, swirling his wine glass, "in some countries, a kidney can sell for $200,000? More if the donor is young, healthy, has the right blood type." I set down my fork, my hand trembling slightly. Around us, the restaurant hummed with conversation and laughter, but it felt suddenly distant, like we were in a bubble separate from the rest of the world. His gaze moved from my face to my throat, lingering on my pulse point. He smiled, and this time there was nothing practiced about it. It was genuine, hungry, terrifying. "You'd be worth a fortune, Sophia." The steak knife beside my plate caught the light from the candle between us. Suddenly, it felt less like cutlery, and more like the only thing standing between me and whatever Jean-Claude had planned for the rest of our evening. The weekend was perfect. Hallmark movies, wine mountains, a log cabin with a view. I had been looking forward to this for weeks. I was going with Liam, divorced dad, worked in IT, even brought along homemade chili in a cooler. I had a funny feeling when I noticed heavy padlocks on the outside of the bedroom doors. "Bears," he explained with a laugh, tossing another log into the fireplace. "You don't want one sneaking in while you're asleep." Later, as the mountain wind howled, I stirred awake. The fire had burned down to embers. Standing at the foot of the bed was Liam. Just standing. His head tilted slightly, eyes glassy, breathing slow. I whispered his name. No response. After several endless seconds, he finally muttered, "You look peaceful when you're not moving." I never closed my eyes again that night. The morning couldn't come fast enough. I lay there in the darkness, every muscle in my body rigid, listening to the sound of his breathing gradually return to normal. Eventually, he shuffled back to his side of the bed and settled under the covers as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just stood there watching me sleep like some kind of predator studying its prey. When dawn finally crept through the cabin windows, Liam was back to his cheerful, normal self. He made coffee, hummed while scrambling eggs, and chatted about the hiking trail he wanted to show me. The transformation was so complete that I almost convinced myself I'd dreamed the whole thing. Almost. "Sleep well?" he asked, sliding a plate of eggs across the rustic wooden table. "Like a baby," I lied, forcing a smile while my stomach churned. The eggs looked perfect, fluffy, seasoned just right, but I could barely manage a few bites. Every time I looked at him, I saw that tilted head, those glassy eyes. "Great! I was thinking we could hit the trail after breakfast. There's this amazing overlook about 2 miles up. The view is incredible. You can see for miles in every direction." His enthusiasm seemed genuine, but now everything felt calculated. Was he planning something? Was the overlook isolated enough that no one would hear me scream? I nodded and pushed the eggs around my plate, buying time to think. My phone had no signal. He'd mentioned that when we arrived, laughing about how we'd be completely disconnected from the world. At the time, it had sounded romantic. Now it felt like a trap. The hiking boots he'd suggested I bring sat by the door, and I found myself staring at them while he cleaned up breakfast. They were good boots, sturdy, broken in, the kind you could run in if you had to. The thought surprised me. Was I really considering running? From Liam, who brought homemade chili and talked about his daughter's soccer games. But then I remembered his breathing in the dark. Slow. Controlled. Like he was savoring the moment. "Ready for that hike?" he called from the kitchen, and I jumped. "Actually, I'm feeling a bit queasy," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. "Maybe we could just relax here for a while. Enjoy the view from the deck." His face fell slightly, and for a moment, something flickered behind his eyes. Disappointment? Irritation? It was gone so quickly I couldn't be sure. "Of course," he said, but his voice had changed. Flatter somehow. "We can do whatever you want." The way he said, "whatever you want," made my skin crawl. It sounded like he was humoring me, like a parent agreeing to let a child stay up past bedtime, while secretly planning to enforce the rules later. I spent the morning on the deck, pretending to read while actually studying the terrain. The cabin sat on a ridge, surrounded by dense forest. The driveway wound down through the trees for what looked like at least a mile before reaching the main road. Even if I could get to my car, Liam had the keys. He'd offered to drive up, being the gentleman, and I'd thought it was sweet. Now I realized he'd effectively stranded me. "Penny for your thoughts." Liam appeared beside me with 2 mugs of coffee. I hadn't heard him approach, and I flinched so hard I nearly knocked over my chair. "Sorry," he said, but he was smiling. "Didn't mean to startle you." The smile didn't reach his eyes. Those same glassy eyes from the night before. "Just enjoying the quiet," I managed, accepting the coffee with hands that I hoped weren't visibly shaking. "It is peaceful up here," he agreed, settling into the chair beside me. "No neighbors for miles. No one to bother us. We could stay up here forever, and no one would even know where to look." The words hung in the air between us like a threat disguised as a romantic notion. I took a sip of coffee to hide my expression and immediately regretted it. It tasted wrong, bitter in a way that had nothing to do with the beans. I set the mug down carefully on the deck railing. "I should probably check in with my sister," I said. "Let her know I made it up safely. No signal, remember?" Liam's voice was still pleasant, but there was something underneath it now. Something that made me think of the padlocks on the bedroom doors. "Besides, didn't you tell her you'd be back Sunday night? It's only Saturday." He was right. I had told Sarah I'd be back Sunday night, and I had mentioned I might not have cell service. At the time, it had seemed like a fun adventure, a digital detox with a nice guy I'd met through a dating app. Now I realized how perfectly I'd isolated myself. "You're right," I said, forcing another smile. "Guess I'm just used to being connected all the time." "That's the beauty of places like this," Liam said, and his hand found mine on the arm of the chair. His skin was cold despite the warm morning sun. "Forces you to focus on what's really important." His thumb traced across my knuckles, and I had to fight every instinct not to pull away. His touch felt possessive, like he was marking territory. The rest of the day passed in a surreal haze of forced normalcy. Liam made lunch, sandwiches that I barely touched, claiming I was still feeling queasy. He suggested card games, a walk around the immediate area, even offered to teach me to whittle. All perfectly innocent activities that felt sinister under the circumstances. As evening approached, my anxiety ratcheted higher. I couldn't face another night in that bed, couldn't risk falling asleep and waking up to find him standing over me again. Or worse, not waking up at all. "I think I might sleep on the couch tonight," I announced as he started building up the fire. "My stomach's still bothering me, and I don't want to keep you awake if I'm tossing and turning." Liam paused, a log halfway to the fireplace. "The couch isn't very comfortable." "I don't mind. Really. I insist you take the bed." "I'll take the couch." The firmness in his voice made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. I nodded, knowing I had no choice but to agree, while my mind raced through possibilities. The bedroom door had a lock on the inside. I'd checked that morning. But those heavy padlocks on the outside haunted me. What if he decided to use them? As we prepared for bed, I palmed the small pocket knife from my keychain. It wasn't much, but it was something. I also wedged a chair under the bedroom door handle, a trick I'd seen in movies that I prayed would work in real life. The notification chimed at 11:47 p.m. Manila time. I remember because I'd been staring at my phone for hours, watching the rain streak down the hostel window like tears on glass. 3 weeks in the Philippines, and I'd barely spoken to anyone who wasn't trying to sell me something. Arlene had messaged first. Her profile picture showed dark eyes and a smile that seemed to know secrets. You look lonely, she'd written. I know the real Manila. Not the tourist traps. I should have deleted the app right then. But loneliness makes you stupid. Makes you ignore the way her English was too perfect, too practiced. Makes you forget that beautiful women don't usually message pale, awkward backpackers at midnight. We met at a 7-Eleven in Malate. She was smaller than her photos suggested, wearing a yellow sundress that seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights. Her smile was exactly the same as in the picture, too wide, too knowing. Dieter, she said, pronouncing my name like she'd been practicing. You're exactly what I expected. The way she said it made my skin crawl, but I smiled anyway. Loneliness, remember? Where would you like to go? I asked. I know a place, she said. Very authentic. Very private. Her car was a white sedan with tinted windows. The interior smelled like disinfectant and something else, something metallic that made my nose wrinkle. She noticed me sniffing. Sorry, she said, starting the engine. I work at a hospital. Sometimes the smell follows you home. The drive took us deeper into Manila than I'd ever been. The neon signs gave way to narrow streets and concrete walls topped with broken glass. Arlene hummed as she drove, the same melody over and over. A children's song, maybe. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. Almost there, she said, turning down a street so narrow I could touch the buildings on both sides. My friends are excited to meet you. Friends? Just a few people. They're very interested in international visitors. The house looked like every other house on the street, concrete walls, metal gate, laundry hanging from the windows. But something was wrong with it. The windows were too dark. The gate was too new. And there was that smell again, stronger now, seeping through the car's air conditioning. Here we are, Arlene said, but she didn't turn off the engine. Before we go in, I should mention, my friends, they have a business proposition for you. What kind of proposition? Her smile widened. The kind that could solve all your money problems. Permanently. The gate opened before we even got out of the car. 3 men emerged from the shadows, thin, nervous-looking men with surgical masks hanging around their necks like jewelry. One of them opened my door. Welcome, he said in accented English. Please come inside. We have much to discuss. The house was wrong inside too. The walls were covered with medical diagrams, cross-sections of human torsos, detailed illustrations of organs. Kidneys, livers, hearts. All labeled in multiple languages. German was one of them. Sit, said the man who'd opened my door. His name was Ronaldo, he told me, though he looked nothing like any Ronaldo I'd ever met. We have coffee. Very good coffee. I didn't want coffee. I wanted to leave. But Arlene was blocking the door, still smiling that knowing smile. The proposition is simple, Ronaldo continued. You need money, yes? For travel? For life? I'm fine, actually. Everyone needs money, interrupted another man. This one was older, with surgeon's hands and dead eyes. Especially travelers far from home. They showed me the surgical instruments then, laid out on a metal table like a feast. Scalpels, clamps, sutures, everything gleaming under harsh fluorescent lights. 1 kidney, the surgeon said. That's all. You have 2, you only need 1. Very safe procedure. Very profitable. I'm not interested. $50,000, Arlene said from behind me. American dollars. I said no. The surgeon's smile never wavered. Perhaps you misunderstand. This is not a request. That's when I noticed the locks on the windows, the bars on the doors, the way the men had positioned themselves between me and any possible exit. My passport is safe with us, Ronaldo said, patting his jacket pocket. Along with your phone, your wallet, your return ticket. Everything you need to leave the Philippines. The room started to spin. The coffee, they drugged the coffee. My vision blurred, and the medical diagrams on the walls seemed to pulse and writhe. Don't worry, the surgeon said, his voice echoing strangely. You won't feel anything. We're professionals. I tried to run, tried to scream, but my legs wouldn't work, and my voice came out as a whisper. They carried me downstairs, to a basement that smelled like death and disinfectant. The surgical beds were waiting. Please, I managed to say. Please, I have family. Everyone has family, the surgeon replied, pulling on latex gloves. That's what makes this so profitable. The last thing I remember clearly is the ceiling. White tiles with brown stains that looked like continents. Like maps of places I'd never see again. After that, everything becomes fragments. Flashes of light. The sound of metal on metal. Arlene's voice, humming that children's song. The surgeon's hands, always moving, always cutting. And pain. So much pain that it became a living thing, crawling through my veins like fire. I think I screamed. I think I begged. I think I called for my mother in German, the way I used to when I was small and afraid of the dark. After 12 hours of running between ICU rooms at Detroit Receiving Hospital, a date sounded like exactly the kind of dumb distraction I needed. James had been a patient months before, a gash across his eyebrow from a bar fight, nothing major. He remembered me, said I stitched him up gentle like an angel. Flattering enough that when he found me on Instagram later, I didn't immediately block him. We texted for about a week. He wasn't bad-looking, tall, rough around the edges, but charming in that I've seen some shit way. And he kept saying he wanted to thank me properly for taking care of him that night. Eventually, against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him for coffee after a night shift. We picked a 24-hour diner on Woodward Avenue. Safe. Neutral. Always people around. I got there at 7:30 a.m., hair a mess under my hoodie, scrubs wrinkled. He was already waiting in a booth, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "You look even better tired," he said, sliding a coffee toward me. "Like you've been working hard for me." I laughed awkwardly, sliding into the booth. "For you and about 30 other people." The first 15 minutes were fine. Small talk. He asked about nursing, about growing up in Michigan. I asked about his job, construction, sometimes security gigs. Normal stuff. Then the conversation shifted. He leaned forward, eyes glinting. "I already knew what you'd order." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah, grilled cheese and tomato soup. That's your thing, right?" I blinked. "How would you know that?" He smiled like a magician about to reveal a trick. "I pay attention. You always get it when you come here. Wednesdays after night shift. Sometimes Fridays too, when you're off early." The coffee soured in my stomach. "I didn't tell you that," I said carefully. "You didn't have to." His grin widened. "I see you." Something in his tone made my skin prickle. He started listing more things. My dog's name. The fact that my apartment window faces the streetlight. That I leave the TV on when I fall asleep. That I sometimes sit on the fire escape with a cigarette, even though I don't really smoke. Every detail felt like a brick being stacked on my chest. "James, how do you know all this?" He shrugged. "You leave your curtains open. You walk the same routes. You're a creature of habit, Alice." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I've been watching you for weeks." The clatter of dishes, the hiss of the coffee machine, all of it faded under the thudding of my heart. "That's not funny," I said. My voice cracked. "I'm not joking." His hand slid across the table, brushing mine. His skin was rough, too warm. "I like knowing you. The real you. Not the nurse. Not the Instagram girl. The one who hums to herself while brushing her teeth. The one who cries after visiting her mom's grave." My blood turned to ice. I yanked my hand back, nearly knocking over the coffee. "I think I should go." His smile faltered, just for a second. Then it snapped back into place, even wider. "Why?" We were just starting to connect. I slid out of the booth, my legs shaking. "This isn't a connection, James. This is stalking." He didn't move to stop me. Didn't yell or grab. He just sat there, eyes locked on me, smiling that too wide smile. "See you tonight," he called after me. I stumbled out into the cold Detroit morning, the air biting my lungs. My hands shook as I dialed my roommate, telling her to make sure the door was locked. That day, I filed a police report. They listened, nodded, said they'd look into it. Nothing came of it. Unless he physically hurt me, their hands were tied. For a week, I barely slept. I shut the blinds, locked every bolt, left the TV on loud. Still, every creak of the building made me jump. Every shadow looked like him. Then one night, after another brutal shift, I found a note under my door. No envelope. Just a piece of paper folded once. "You look beautiful in blue today. You should wear it more often." I hadn't worn blue at work. I'd worn it at home. A tank top, no bra, while making ramen in my kitchen. He wasn't watching me from the street. He'd been inside. I called the police again, voice cracking, but by the time they arrived, the note was gone. My locks showed no signs of tampering. They treated me like I was paranoid, overtired. But I knew. Over the next week, little things went missing. A pair of underwear. A mug. My spare phone charger. Then I found something that wasn't mine. A button, black and shiny, sitting on my bathroom sink. James didn't text. Didn't call. Didn't show up in public. He didn't need to. He let me know in small, terrifying ways that he was always close. I started staying with coworkers, crashing on couches, never going straight home after work. He found me anyway. Another note on my windshield this time, stop hiding. I already know where you are. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook so hard I dropped the note in the parking lot. I didn't pick it up. That night, I sat awake with a knife clutched in my hand, waiting for footsteps outside my door. When they came, soft and deliberate, I nearly screamed. The doorknob rattled. Once. Twice. Then silence. I called 911, whispering into the phone. By the time officers arrived, the hallway was empty. They did a sweep, found nothing. Could have been anyone, one said. But I knew it was him. I left Detroit 2 weeks later. Transferred hospitals, changed numbers, deleted my social media. Packed my life into boxes and fled like I was running from a war zone. I'd always had a thing for guys who lived off-grid. Adventurous. Spontaneous. A little scruffy in a way that smelled like fags and gasoline. I matched with Manny on Hinge. He talked about Colorado, about camping under the stars, about never needing a boss to tell him what to do. He teased me for being a city girl and promised to show me the real life. Our first date was at a food truck park in Austin. Laid back, tacos and picnic tables under string lights. When he showed up, I almost laughed. He looked exactly like his profile. Long hair tied back, tan skin, denim cutoffs, sandals with duct tape on the straps. He kissed my cheek hello, smelled faintly of campfire and sweat. You ready to see the van? He asked after we ate. I said yes without hesitation. It was parked a block away, tucked between two bigger trucks. From the outside, it looked like the kind of vehicle you'd expect to belong to a traveling band. Stickers on the bumper, keep Austin weird, live free or die, home is where you park it. Inside, though, it was cozy. Fairy lights strung across the ceiling, incense burning, a bed made with a colorful quilt. Polaroids taped along the wall showed mountains, beaches, and grinning with strangers. I actually said wow, because it felt like a Pinterest board come to life. Make yourself at home, he said, sliding the door shut. The click echoed too loud in my ears. I reached for the handle, more out of curiosity than nerves, and realized there wasn't one on the inside. Smooth metal. No latch. Manny grinned, catching my confusion. Custom mod. Keeps things simple. He tossed himself onto the bed, stretching out. His shirt rode up, exposing a trail of hair down his stomach. He patted the quilt. Come on. Don't be shy. I sat gingerly on the edge, telling myself not to freak out. Lots of vans had quirks. And honestly, part of me liked the way his thigh brushed against mine. He had that kind of physical presence that made you want to lean in just to see what would happen. He leaned closer, lips grazing my ear. Once you're in my world, you don't leave. I froze. Excuse me? He chuckled, teeth flashing. Not in a bad way, Jasmine. I mean, you belong here. You don't need the city. You don't need rent or jobs or bullshit. You've got me. You've got the van. That's freedom. I tried to laugh it off, shifting back. That's a lot for a first date. But he slid his hand onto my thigh, squeezing just enough to make my stomach twist. First date, last date, what's the difference? We're here now. The incense burned sweeter, cloying. The fairy lights flickered. The walls of the van suddenly felt closer. I tested the door again, fingers brushing the smooth metal. Seriously, how do you get out? You don't, he said simply. Then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. His tongue pushed past my lips, his hand clamping harder on my thigh. His other hand found my waist, pulling me against him. My brain screamed stop, but my body betrayed me, responding with a flicker of heat even through the panic. I broke the kiss, gasping. Manny, this is too much. His eyes narrowed. You're scared. That's just because you don't get it yet. He reached over me, tugging a curtain across the small window. Darkness swallowed the van, only the glow of the fairy lights left. You'll learn, he murmured, lips brushing my jaw. Out here, it's just us. No rules. No one to stop us. I forced myself to play along. I kissed him back, slower this time, hand brushing his chest. His grip loosened, his breathing quickened. I let him think I was giving in. And then, while his eyes fluttered shut, I shoved him hard and scrambled toward the front of the van. The driver's seat was cluttered with maps, empty cans, a half-eaten sandwich, but I didn't care. I lunged for the keys dangling in the ignition. Manny roared behind me, grabbing for my ankle. I kicked back, connecting with something soft. He cursed, grip slipping. The engine roared to life. I threw the van into drive and slammed the gas. The vehicle lurched forward, slamming me against the wheel, but I didn't stop. Jasmine! Manny screamed from the back. Don't you dare! I swerved hard, throwing him off balance. He crashed into the wall with a grunt. The road blurred beneath us, streetlights flickering past. At the next intersection, I jerked the wheel and slammed the brakes. The side door flew open with the force of the stop. Apparently, it did have a handle after all, just not inside. Manny tumbled out, hitting the pavement with a thud and a string of curses. I didn't wait to see if he was hurt. I floored it, heart hammering, until I saw downtown Austin again, bright lights, people's safety. I ditched the van in a parking lot and stumbled out, gasping, shaking. My phone had blown up with missed texts from my roommate. I called her, voice cracking, begged her to pick me up. Later that night, back in my apartment, a new message appeared from an unknown number. You don't get to walk away, Jasmine. The van is home, and home always comes back for you. So yeah, I went on a date last week, and it turned into the scariest night of my life. I wasn't even going to post this because I know how it's going to sound, but I literally can't stop thinking about it, and maybe typing it out will help. His name was Fred. We matched on Bumble. Not really my type. He had this super goth vibe, eyeliner in half his pics, black trench coat in the others. Normally I'd swipe left, but he was witty in his messages and made me laugh. I figured, okay, one drink won't kill me. Except he didn't want to meet at a pub or cafe. He said those places were too ordinary. He suggested Greyfriars Kirkyard. For anyone not from Edinburgh, that's this old-ass cemetery that's apparently haunted. I thought it was a joke. Like, haha, spooky date. He was dead serious. I almost bailed, but I've been trying this thing where I say yes more often. Stupid, I know. Anyway, I get there around 10:30 p.m. It's already dark, drizzle in the air. He's standing inside the gates with a single candle. I swear to God he looked like a character out of a horror movie. Pale skin, black coat, that one candle glowing against his face. He goes, "You came," like I just walked into a cult meeting. I laughed because what else do you do? We walked deeper into the cemetery. It's silent except for our footsteps on wet gravel. I'm trying to play it cool, but every grave marker feels like it's leaning closer. He stops, sets the candle down, and pulls this velvet bag out of his coat. Dumps the contents onto the ground. Bones. Actual bones. I go, those better be fake. He looks me dead in the eye and says, they belong to a child. I felt like I was gonna puke. My brain immediately went, okay, maybe he bought them online, maybe they're replicas, but the way he said it made me believe him. He starts laying tarot cards next to the bones, whispering in some language I didn't understand. Then he holds out a knife. A real knife. Spill your blood, he says. The spirits demand it. I laughed again, because my brain short-circuits when I'm scared. Fred, I'm not cutting myself in a cemetery. What the hell? He just smiles. You came here willingly. You can't leave without giving something. At that exact moment, I swear I heard voices. Like whispers, but coming from the ground. Dozens of them. I don't know if it was the wind, or my mind playing tricks, but it sounded real. I panicked. Said something dumb like, okay, cool, fun date, and turned to leave. But when I reached the gate, it was closed. I don't mean locked with a chain. I mean slammed shut like someone pushed it. The whole metal frame rattled. Fred hadn't moved from where he was standing, but he called after me. If you leave without an offering, they'll follow you home. I don't remember deciding to run. My body just did it. I tore through the graves, nearly tripped twice, scraped my knee on a stone. I could hear him behind me laughing. Not chasing, just laughing. By the time I reached the gate again, I pulled so hard I thought the skin would rip off my hands. This time it opened. I stumbled into the street, nearly knocked over a drunk couple passing by. I ran straight back to my flat, slammed the door, locked it, and drove off quicker than ever before. Alright, I don't post on Reddit much, but I've been lurking on r/let's not meet and r/nosleep for years. I matched with Timothy on Tinder about 3 months ago. He was normal. You know what I mean? Not another finance bro with a boat photo. The night of the planned date, he was 20 minutes late. Not ideal, but not a deal breaker. He came rushing in, slightly sweaty, apologizing for train delays. He looked like his pictures, button-up shirt, khakis, glasses. Nerdy cute. I was relieved. We ordered wine, pasta, and for the first hour it was fine. Really fine. He talked about his job, accounting for a mid-sized firm in the Loop, his sister who lived in Evanston, his terrible cooking skills. He laughed at my jokes, asked questions, made eye contact. Halfway through, he excused himself to use the restroom. I pulled out my phone, scrolling, half smiling. Normal date things. That's when it happened. Another man approached the table. At first, I thought Timothy had come back, but something felt wrong. His posture was different, sharper. His expression wasn't friendly, it was urgent. He slid into the booth across from me without asking. My stomach dropped. "You need to leave," he said, voice low, eyes darting around like he was afraid of being overheard. I blinked. "Excuse me?" He leaned forward, hands on the table. "The man you're with, he's not who you think. I'm his brother. He's dangerous. You need to leave. Now." My laugh came out shaky. "This isn't funny. I'm not joking." His eyes burned into mine. "You're in danger. Get up. Walk out. Don't look back." I froze. My mind scrambled to catch up. He looked exactly like Timothy, but older somehow. Or maybe just more tired. Same jawline, same haircut, same damn glasses. But his energy was off. Before I could respond, Timothy came back. And the look on his face when he saw his brother? I'll never forget it. His smile disappeared instantly. His jaw clenched. His eyes narrowed into something cold, calculating. "Did he talk to you?" Timothy asked me, his voice flat. My throat closed. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered against the plate. I don't know what's going on," I stammered. The other one stood fast. "Come with me," he said. "Right now." But Timothy's hand shot across the table and clamped onto my wrist. Not painfully, but firmly. "Don't listen to him," he hissed. I looked around the restaurant. People were laughing, clinking glasses, waiters bustling with plates of pasta. Nobody noticed anything was wrong. To them, it was just 3 people at a table. To me, it felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. I yanked my wrist free. "I need the bathroom," I muttered, standing so fast I nearly knocked over my chair. Both of them stared at me. I swear, for a second, they moved in sync. I didn't go to the bathroom. I walked straight out the front door, my legs shaking so hard I thought I'd collapse. On State Street, I half ran, weaving through crowds, terrified one of them would follow. I didn't stop until I ducked into a Walgreens, pretending to shop while hiding near the refrigerated aisle. My hands shook as I texted my roommate, "Call me now. Pretend it's urgent." She did. I answered on the first ring, babbling, trying to sound casual in case anyone was listening. Then I ordered an Uber from the Walgreens, refusing to step outside until it arrived. The whole ride home, I kept checking the rearview mirror, convinced I'd see one of them following. When I got back to my apartment in Lakeview, I locked every bolt, shoved a chair under the door, and sat in the dark shaking. I unmatched Timothy, blocked his number, deleted Hinge. I thought that would be the end. But 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. Just one line. "You left with the wrong one." My stomach dropped so hard I thought I'd throw up. I didn't respond. I blocked the number. The next day, another text, different number. "We're not finished, Sam." I stopped sleeping. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. Every reflection in a window looked like him. Or them. A week later, I was walking home from the Red Line when I spotted someone standing across the street. He was just watching me. Too far to see clearly, but the posture, the shape. It was him. Or his brother. Or both. I ran home, slammed the door, locked it again. That night, there was a knock. Soft. Deliberate. When I checked the peephole, no one was there. But taped to my door was a note. "Stop hiding. Choose one of us." I haven't told anyone this part yet. Not my friends, not even my roommate. But last night, I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of my closet door creaking open. I thought it was a dream. But when I sat up, I swear I saw a figure standing in the dark, just tall enough to brush the ceiling. I blinked, and it was gone. When I turned on the light, my closet door was wide open. And on the floor, tucked neatly by my shoes, was a folded piece of paper. It said, "You'll pick wrong again." I should have trusted my gut when Rylan first told me he worked as a clown. The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, like he was announcing he worked in accounting or sold insurance, should have been my first red flag. But I laughed it off. After all, we'd been chatting on the dating app for weeks, and his messages had been perfectly normal. Nothing about our digital conversations had prepared me for what was about to unfold at Casa Miguel's that Tuesday evening. The restaurant was a Mexican place with papal picado strung across the ceiling and mariachi music playing softly in the background. I'd arrived first, as usual. Punctuality was something my mother had drilled into me since childhood, and claimed a corner booth where we could talk without shouting over the dinner crowd. When Rylan walked in, I recognized him immediately from his photos, wearing a button-down shirt that was wrinkled just enough to suggest he'd grabbed it from a laundry basket. "Debbie?" he asked as he approached the table, though we both knew the answer. I stood to greet him, and we did that awkward first date dance of deciding whether to hug, shake hands, or just sit down. We settled on a brief, friendly hug that smelled faintly of cologne, and something else I couldn't quite place, something sweet and artificial, like cotton candy or bubble gum. The first hour went surprisingly well. Rylan was funny in a dry, observational way, making clever comments about the restaurant's decor and the couple at the next table who were clearly on a Tinder date gone wrong. He told me about his day job, or what I assumed was his day job, working children's birthday parties and corporate events around the city. He described the elaborate balloon animals he could make, the magic tricks he'd perfected, and the way kids' faces lit up when he walked into a room. There was something almost wistful in his voice when he talked about making people happy, about being the source of joy and laughter in someone's day. "It's not just about the silly costumes and the pratfalls," he explained, gesturing with his fork as he spoke. "There's real skill involved. Timing, reading the room, knowing exactly when to push a joke and when to pull back. Most people don't understand that." I nodded along, genuinely interested despite my initial skepticism about dating someone in such an unconventional profession. He seemed passionate about his work, and there was something endearing about a grown man who dedicated his life to making children laugh. We ordered another round of margaritas, and I found myself relaxing into the conversation, thinking that maybe this could actually go somewhere. That's when things took a turn. We were discussing our worst dating experiences, always a risky but somehow inevitable topic on first dates, when Rylan's expression suddenly shifted. His smile faltered, and he got that distant look people get when they're remembering something unpleasant. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, round compact mirror, the kind women carry for touch-ups. But instead of checking his appearance, he opened it and stared at his reflection with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "You know," he said, his voice taking on a strange, hollow quality, "people never really laugh at me. Not the way they should." Before I could ask what he meant, he reached into another pocket and produced a small tube of what looked like theatrical makeup. My stomach dropped as I watched him squeeze a dollop of white grease paint onto his finger and begin smearing it across his cheeks with practiced, methodical strokes. The transformation was swift and unsettling. Within seconds, his face was taking on the ghostly pallor of a classic clown. "Rylan," I whispered, glancing around nervously at the other diners. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out a tube of red lipstick and began applying it with the same mechanical precision, creating an exaggerated smile that stretched far beyond the natural boundaries of his mouth. His hands moved with muscle memory, like he'd done this routine thousands of times before. The red was too bright, too garish under the restaurant's warm lighting, and it made his teeth look yellow by comparison. "People never laugh at me," he muttered again, more to himself than to me. The words came out distorted now, filtered through the artificial grin he'd painted on. "They laugh at the costume, at the character, but never at me. Never at Rylan." My heart was pounding now, and I could feel the eyes of nearby diners beginning to turn in our direction. A family with young children at a table across from us had stopped eating entirely, the parents exchanging worried glances while their kids stared with the kind of fascination that children reserve for car accidents and circus freaks. Rylan finished his makeup application and snapped the compact shut with a sharp click that seemed to echo through the suddenly quiet restaurant. When he looked up at me, I barely recognized him. The kind eyes behind the wire-rimmed glasses were now framed by white paint and red lips, creating a grotesque parody of joy that made my skin crawl. He reached across the table and placed a makeup brush in front of me. Where had that come from? Along with the tube of white grease paint. "Your turn," he said, and his voice had taken on a sing-song quality that belonged in a children's television show, not a Mexican restaurant on a Tuesday night. I stared at the brush like it was a snake. "Rylan, I don't want to." "Your turn," he repeated, more insistently this time. The painted smile never wavered, but something dark flickered behind his eyes. "No," I said firmly, pushing the brush back toward him. "I'm not doing that." That's when his carefully constructed facade cracked. The painted grin remained frozen in place, but his eyes went cold and wild simultaneously, like a switch had been flipped somewhere deep in his brain. His voice dropped to a hiss that raised the hair on the back of my neck. "Don't laugh at the clown." The words came out low and menacing, completely at odds with his ridiculous appearance. Before I could respond, He slammed both hands down on the table with such force that our drinks jumped and sloshed, sending droplets of margarita across the white tablecloth. The sound reverberated through the restaurant like a gunshot, and suddenly every conversation stopped. Every fork paused midway to every mouth. Every eye in the place turned to stare at us, at him, at this grown man in clown makeup having what appeared to be a complete psychological breakdown in the middle of their dinner. In that moment of absolute silence, I realized with crystal clarity that this wasn't a performance. This wasn't some elaborate joke or misguided attempt at being memorable. This was compulsion, obsession, something broken and dangerous that lived inside Rylan and had finally clawed its way to the surface. The man I'd been chatting with for weeks, the man who'd seemed so normal and charming and safe, was gone. In his place sat a stranger wearing grease paint and madness, demanding that I participate in whatever twisted ritual had consumed him. I grabbed my purse and stood up so quickly that my chair scraped against the floor with a harsh screech. "I have to go," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. As I hurried toward the exit, I could hear him calling after me in that horrible sing-song voice. "Don't laugh at the clown, Debbie. Don't laugh at the clown." I didn't look back. Paris has a way of making you reckless. It was my second week there, and I'd already been swept into the kind of nights you think only exist in movies. Wine until dawn, kissing strangers on bridges, music leaking out of bars so late it feels like the world's only staying awake for you. That's how I met Laurent. He wasn't young, not by the standards of the apps I usually swiped on, late 30s, maybe early 40s. But he had that polished Parisian aura. Tailored suit, salt and pepper hair, jawline sharp as a blade. He caught me at a wine bar in Le Marais, watching me struggle with the cork of a too expensive bottle I'd ordered just to feel fancy. He appeared at my elbow like he'd been waiting for the cue. "Allow me," he said in that low, confident French accent. With a flick of his wrist, the cork was free. He poured, smiled, handed me the glass like it was a ritual. We talked until the bar closed. Or really, he talked and I listened. About cooking, about travel, about the art of taste. He asked questions too, but there was something about the way he asked them, like each answer was going into a file in his head. Not judgmental, just precise. When he asked if I wanted to come over for dinner later that week, I said yes before my brain could interfere. His apartment was tucked on a narrow street near Montmartre. Old building, ivy creeping up the walls, iron balcony railings. It smelled incredible the second I stepped inside. Garlic, butter, herbs, something rich and savory that made my stomach growl. "You cook?" I asked, dropping my bag on a velvet chair. "Always," he said, shrugging off his jacket. "Cooking is intimacy. It reveals everything." The kitchen was spotless. Knives hung on a magnetic strip, gleaming. Pans polished, herbs drying by the window. He moved like a conductor, pouring me wine without asking, tasting a sauce with the flick of a spoon. I perched on a stool, sipping. I couldn't help watching him. The way his sleeves rolled up just so, revealing forearms dusted with dark hair. The way he plated even the smallest appetizer with care. He made me feel like I was part of something secret. We ate little dishes first, slices of cured meats, olives bursting with oil, bread so warm it melted with butter. He kept refilling my glass, and I let him, the edges of the room softening. "You like to eat," he said, eyes glinting as I licked a bit of sauce from my thumb. "Who doesn't?" I teased. "Some eat to live. Others live to eat." His smile was faint, unreadable. The main course came last. He brought it out with ceremony, a silver lid he lifted like he was revealing a masterpiece. A cut of meat, seared golden, surrounded by vegetables that glistened with butter. It smelled divine, smoky, savory, primal. I dug in without hesitation, the fork sliding through tender flesh, juices pooling. I moaned, actually moaned, at the taste. Rich, fatty, melting. That's when he leaned forward, wine glass in hand, and asked it. "Do you know," he said, almost casual, "how long it takes to roast a human thigh?" I laughed. Too loud, wine buzzing in my head. "Excuse me?" He didn't blink. Didn't smile. Just watched me chew. "It must be slow. 2 hours, maybe 3. Low heat, so the fat renders. The aroma is extraordinary." My stomach turned. I set the fork down carefully. "That's not funny. It's not a joke." His tone was even, patient, like he was teaching a child. I forced a shaky laugh, waiting for the punchline, but his eyes stayed locked on mine. Sharp. Hungry. "You're insane," I muttered. He leaned closer, voice dropping. "No. I'm a chef. I wanted to run, but my body felt pinned to the chair. He sipped his wine, never breaking eye contact, then gestured to my plate. "Eat," he said softly. "It's lamb. Tonight." The word tonight caught in my ears, sticky, deliberate. I pushed the plate away. "I think I should go." "Most women stay," he murmured, swirling his glass. My pulse hammered. I grabbed my bag, stood on unsteady legs. He didn't rise. He just sat there, smiling faintly, like he'd already won something. As I reached the door, he said one last thing. "You'd be delicious slow roasted." The words followed me down the stairwell, down the street, echoing over the sound of rain on the cobblestones. Back at my hotel, I tried to shake it off. Tell myself he was eccentric, twisted sense of humor, Parisian theatrics. But when I emptied my purse, a folded piece of paper fell out. I hadn't put it there. It said, "Next time I'll choose the cut." I dropped it like it burned me. For weeks after, I couldn't eat meat without gagging. Couldn't smell garlic or butter without my stomach nodding. I deleted every dating app. We met at a bowling alley. It was that simple, that stupid. I was out with a friend, half drunk, gutterballing every frame, and this guy, Fred, showed up at the lane next to ours. He wasn't gorgeous, but he had a nice, confident charm about him. By the end of the night, he'd slid his number into my hand on a receipt. "Let me take you out proper," he said. We texted for a while. He was funny, normal, like dogs hated pineapple on pizza. Nothing that set off alarms. When he asked if I wanted to grab beers and maybe watch a movie at his place, I said yes. His house looked normal. Ranch style, neat little yard, American flag on the porch. Inside, it smelled like laundry detergent and cologne. The first weird thing? The windows. Every single one had bars. "Rough neighborhood," he said with a shrug when I asked. "Safer that way." I told myself it made sense. Cleveland wasn't exactly crime-free. We had a couple of beers, laughed about bowling again, then he asked if I wanted to check out his home theater in the basement. The stairs creaked as we went down. The air got damp, heavy, the kind of smell that clings, mold, metal, something sharp underneath. He flicked on a bare bulb. There was no theater. Just concrete walls, a stained mattress, and chains bolted to the cement. My mouth went dry. "What is this?" The door slammed behind me. Fred leaned against it, smiling like he'd just won something. "You're not the first," he said. I screamed. He didn't move. "You'll get used to it," he went on, voice calm, like we were still upstairs. The others did. I begged. I swore. I told him I had friends waiting. He just chuckled, shaking his head. Hours blurred. He didn't hit me. He didn't touch me yet. He just watched. I could hear the faint sound of traffic outside, but it felt 100 miles away. At some point, he sat down on a chair in the corner, cracked another beer, and started talking. About how women always underestimated him. About how he collected people. About how he kept things from the ones who didn't make it. And then he said something that froze my blood. "It's easier when they stop screaming." I thought of every chain on the wall, the rusted stains on the floor, the mattress that looked like it had been dragged a dozen times. I needed a weapon. When he stood to grab another beer from the mini fridge, I saw it. An empty bottle near the mattress. My hands shook so hard I thought I'd drop it, but I clutched it tight. When he turned back, smiling, I swung with everything I had. The glass shattered against his arm, slicing deep. He howled, stumbling back, clutching the wound. That was my only chance. I bolted up the stairs barefoot, the concrete tearing at my skin. He lunged, fingers grazing my ankle, but I kicked back hard and kept climbing. The door at the top was locked, padlocked. I slammed into it again and again, panic drowning everything. Then I remembered, keys. I spun, saw his jeans pocket bulging. He was groaning, trying to stand, blood dripping. I dove, ripped the keys out, and scrambled back up. My hands were slick with his blood, fumbling, shaking. Somehow, by miracle or rage, the padlock clicked. I burst onto the street barefoot, screaming. A neighbor came out. Then sirens. Then cops. Fred was arrested bleeding on his own basement floor. At the station, they told me something I still can't shake. I wasn't the first girl they'd pulled from that house. And some of the others never walked out, apparently. I thought I'd be writing one of those funny disaster posts like, "LOL, my date chewed with his mouth open," or "he talked about his ex the whole time." Nope. This one's haunted me for months. So yeah, I matched with a dude named Stevie while I was in Tokyo for work. He was half Japanese, half American, living there long term. His pictures weren't bad, kind of artsy, moody lighting, sharp jawline, black hair slicked back. He had that brooding thing going on that I'll admit I'm a sucker for. We texted a little. He wasn't super chatty, but I figured, hey, not everyone's good at texting. He suggested sushi at a place near Shinjuku. Fine by me. I'd been craving it anyway. I show up right on time. He's already there, sitting at the bar, posture straight as a board. He doesn't get up when I walk over, doesn't even wave. Just nods. Okay, whatever. I sit down. I say hi. He doesn't reply. Just gives me this slow blink. The chef sets down tea, and we start ordering. I try small talk, whether where I'm from, my job, literally anything, and he just stares. Not angry. Not bored. Just watching me. He picks up his chopsticks and starts eating. Slowly. Methodically. Like he's on autopilot. Click, pick up fish, chew, swallow. No smile, no words. I laugh nervously and say, "You're the strong, silent type, huh?" Nothing. Just chewing. Now, I've had awkward dates before, but this was next level uncomfortable. I kept talking just to fill the silence. My voice sounded too loud in that quiet bar, like every word bounced off the wood and came back at me. He never laughed, never nodded, never even looked at his phone. Just ate. Half an hour of this. I'm sweating, kicking myself for not bailing earlier. Finally, I'm like, okay, well, this has been something. I'm gonna head out. I start to stand, relieved to escape, when his hand shoots out and clamps around my wrist. Hard. Way stronger than I expected. I freeze. He leans close, his breath hot against my ear, and whispers the first words of the entire night. "You look better quiet too." I swear my stomach dropped to my ankles. I yank my hand back, mumble something like, "Gotta go," and practically sprint out of the restaurant. My whole body was buzzing like I'd just escaped a car crash. I wish that was the end. The next day, I get a message from him. "You left too early. Next time, don't talk so much." I block his number immediately. But then later that week, I get a note slipped under my hotel room door. No envelope. Just paper, folded once. "You look beautiful when you're asleep." I don't even know how the fuck he knew where I was staying. My hotel wasn't fancy, but it wasn't small either. Did he follow me there after the date? Did he bribe the front desk? I called the manager, showed them the note, asked if anyone had asked for my room number. They swore up and down no one had. That night, I shoved a chair against the door and slept with the lights on. Every creak of the hallway made my heart stop. The creepiest part? 2 nights later, I woke up to the sound of chopsticks clicking. Slow. Steady. Coming from somewhere in my room. I sat up so fast I thought I'd pass out. The room was dark, nothing moved, but I swear on everything I love, I heard it. Click. 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 I fumbled for the lamp. Nothing. Just silence. But on the desk, next to my laptop, was a pair of chopsticks. Not the disposable kind you get wrapped in paper. Black lacquer, polished, expensive looking. I hadn't brought them there. I grabbed my suitcase, booked a different hotel across the city, and left within 20 minutes. I didn't even check out. I just left cash on the nightstand and bolted.